Hey everyone, what's up? Danny or Hacked Up for Barbecue here, back to do another edition for my 62 favorite horror films of all time. Today I'm going to be reviewing my third favorite film of all time, and that is Evil Dead 2. Definitely my favorite horror comedy of all time as well. This is the first sequel in the Evil Dead series to go the horror comedy route, but it still manages to be creepy as well. Once again, this DVD is released by Anchor Bay, and the special features on this DVD are as followed. You have an audio commentary track with director Sam Raimi, Scott Spiegel, and very well-known makeup artist Greg Nicotero. A featurette, The Gore the Merrier, Evil Dead Hail to the King video game preview, theatrical trailer, still galleries, and talent bios. Anyway, as I said, this is directed by Sam Raimi. He also wrote the film along with Scott Spiegel. And coming back to produce, you have Robert Tappert and Bruce Campbell, along with now Alex D. Benedetti and Irvin Shapiro. As I said, the makeup effects are done by a very well-known makeup artist, Greg Nicotero, along with his team as well. The film stars, of course, Bruce Campbell as Ash, Sarah Berry as Annie, Danny Hicks as Jake, Cassie Wesley DePaiva as Bobby Joe, and Richard Domer as Eddie. And Sam Raimi's brother, Ted Raimi, actually plays the possessed version of Henrietta. And Sam Raimi actually makes a cameo at the end of the film. Anyway, the budget was higher than the first film, but it did not make nearly as much as money. Had a budget of $3.6 million and made $5.9 million during its theatrical release, which is a shame because it deserved way more. Before I get into the story, I just want to talk about a few things on this film. Of course it's a sequel, but it kind of works as a remake as well, because the first 7 minutes of the film is a recap of the events in the first Evil Dead. Though they had to use new footage for some reason. I heard they couldn't use actual footage from the first Evil Dead. I'm not sure why, but anyway, a new actress, Denise Bixler, portrayed Linda, Ash's girlfriend. Also, two things were changed from the first Evil Dead. The Book of the Dead, known as the Notre Dame de Monto, is now referred to as the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. And the demons are now called Deadites instead of Kandarian demons. So anyway, after that recap, this is when it really becomes Evil Dead 2. Picks up right at the end of the first Evil Dead, where Deadite picks up Ash in the air and throws him face first into a puddle of muddy water. And when he gets up, he is possessed, and he looks pretty fucking badass, actually. Definitely one of my favorite scenes in the film, and he actually gets possessed once again later on in the film. Anyway, though, the sun drives the demon out of him, and you can tell in the sequel that Ash is really starting to lose his mind. Anyway, Ash then passes out and then awakes in front of the cabin where the events took place in the first Evil Dead, and he then hears a demonic voice saying, "Join us," much like what Joe heard in the first Evil Dead. Then Ash gets in his car and tries to get the hell away from the cabin and out of the woods, but he can't because he comes across the bridge, reminding him that it's completely totaled. And then night falls out of nowhere, and Ash gets back in his car and is chased down to the cabin by a Deadite. He then goes flying through his windshield and has pretty much no choice but to hide in the cabin, which he does, and the Deadite loses Ash and goes away. After that, we meet Annie, the daughter of the professor, who we heard on the audio recorder in the first Evil Dead, and her boyfriend and her father's assistant Ed as well is along with her, and they want to go to the cabin to meet her father to translate missing pages of the Book of the Dead, aka the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, that she has. And before they reach the cabin, they meet Jake, this hickish kind of guy who is the only unlikable character in the film. Anyway, he's putting a blinker in front of the fucked up bridge, and Annie says there has to be another way or something that leads to the cabin. And then they meet Bobby Joe, Jake's girlfriend, who's pretty bitchy at first, but soon after she actually becomes likable. But first, Annie and Bobby Joe have this back and forth with each other, and then Jake says he remembers there's a trail and that Annie and Ed could follow them. So when they finally reach the cabin, Annie finds that her parents aren't there as she thought they would be, and she spots a bloody chainsaw on the floor, and they accuse Ash of killing her parents. And then after Ash and Jake get into a fight, Jake punches him unconscious and throws him in the cellar, chains it shut. After that, Annie comes across the audio recorder, and on it is, of course, the professor, her father, and he says that his wife, her mom, became host to a demon and says she tried to kill him. She dies, but it's not explained how. Anyway, he goes on to say that he couldn't bring himself to dismember a corpse, so he buried her in the floor of the cellar, and then she pops up with Ash down there, and then the rest of the characters undo the chains, letting him out, and now they know that Ash wasn't responsible for Annie's parents' death. And later, all four characters go into a room in the cabin where they come across the ghost of the professor, Annie's father, and he says that reciting the passages on the missing pages of the Book of the Dead, aka the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, is the way to stop all this. And they band together and try to survive the night until daylight comes. Anyway, here come the spoilers. I'm going to talk about my favorite scenes in the film. I already mentioned the scene where Ash gets possessed, but I'm going to talk about some others I really love. First up is a scene where Ash tries to finish off Linda. He has her head, and he puts it in this vice grip out back in a shed. And all of a sudden, Linda's body comes running in, headless of course, with the chainsaw. So Ash grabs a crowbar, reverses the chainsaw on her, and it just splits down her neck. And the blood just spews all over Ash. It's great. Second, I like when Ed gets possessed and Ash just butchers the shit out of him with an axe, and you see all this green blood spewing on the wall. Third, I like when Henrietta drags Jake into the cellar and you just see a ton of blood spewing out onto Annie. Fourth, I really like the showdown with Ash and Henrietta, and there's a really awesome line where after he dismembers her with the chainsaw, she goes, "I'll swallow your soul, I'll swallow your soul," and then Ash goes, "Swallow this," and he blasts her in the face with his shotgun. Fucking epic. Fifth, I really like when he takes his hand off with a chainsaw because it's possessed, and you just see the blood spray all over his face. Sixth, I like the scene where he fights this giant tree monster and takes the chainsaw right to its eye, and all this blue blood is spraying out. Seventh, I like where Ash is just standing in the middle of the room and all this blood sprays out of the wall, red and black blood, and then all of a sudden it sucks back in the wall and everything's clean. Some freaky shit right there. Eighth, I really like the scene where Ash is looking in the mirror, and this really shows that he's going insane. He says, I'm fine," and then you see this mirrored version of him that grabs him around the throat saying, "We just hacked up our girlfriend with a chainsaw. Does that sound fine?" And then he still has his hands around his throat, and his mirrored version is gone. Ninth, I like when Ash is going to finish off Linda, and she says in this really creepy voice, "Now she burns in hell." Really fucking creepy. 10th, I like one of the most famous scenes where Ash is gearing up to fuck up Henrietta. He's making some adjustments to a chainsaw to fit on his hand, and he saws off the 2 barrels on a shotgun to make a sawed off, and that epic line he says, "Groovy." Fucking awesome. 11th, I like the scene where the room is possessed and everything is laughing. Ash is laughing along with everything as well. 12th, I really like the scene where Ash steps on the cellar door and Henrietta's eye pops out into Bobby Joe's mouth. 13th, I like the scene where Ash is trying to kill his possessed hand and it gives him the finger. Some funny shit right there. And last, I really like the nod to the following sequel, Army of Darkness. In one of the missing pages, you see a guy with a chainsaw for a hand, and Ash asks Annie, "What is that?" And she said he was called the Hero from the Sky in 1300 AD. who was supposed to destroy the evil, and Ash says he didn't do a very good job, and the picture's obviously of him. Anyway, that's it for this review. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will leave the link below in the description box if you want to watch Evil Dead 2. I know a lot of you have seen it, but if you want to check it out again, or if you haven't seen it by any chance, just click the link below. Anyway, thanks for watching, and take care. Later.